my experience also with the psychedelics, I have been a communist. I have been in this, I've been ideologically possessed. I've been there.
Oh, myself as well. I wouldn't have called myself a communist, but it was
close enough. And I know it didn't help me. It didn't help the people around me. So I made the phenomena, right? The subjective experience of someone, I made this bad. And why do we think the objective world is more valid than this inner experience you have of things? I can understand this possession, but I think we might solve it because let's say the gender identity problems, there is a problem with the terms, because gender identity is not just male and female. Gender identity describes that, and there is a true, but we need to shift the terms, that let's say you and I are male, and
I like to think so.
I agree on that, definitely. But you can have feminine traits that wouldn't make you a female.
I think every man and every woman has masculine and feminine traits.
That's why Buddha, by the way, Buddha was enlightened because he integrated female and male parts. But that's a symbolic reading of that. But therefore confuse gender identity actually with personality traits.
Yeah.
Temperament.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't take this gender identity completely down into the biological stuff and therefore say there is no male and female at all, right? And that's why I think it's a problem of terms. But again, we are here in the Tower of Babel phenomenon.
Yeah. It's male and female, masculine and feminine we are confusing in many ways through this term of equality or equivalency of value, something that should be looked at in terms of being complementary, where both things are required in order for the world to go on and life to be good, but they are not the same, and one cannot become the other, so to speak.
You can have behavioral traits that are more, I like to dance, I like to sing. I would say that is associated more with the feminine part, right? Yeah. But that doesn't make me a female in that. And I think that is why people, they don't talk about the same things, I would say, right?
Oh no, and it seems to me that these terms are either being purposefully confused, where, like you were saying about language, you have to come to agreement of what the words mean in order to have a discussion. And when things are slide and have moving goalposts, and like at one point it's genders means sex and the other time it means masculine and feminine, makes it impossible to have an understanding that comes from a common, let alone even as you try to establish those terms, if you don't use them correctly, so to speak, you become an evil person, which is just the most noxious part of this whole thing.
The best analyst of ideology was probably Nietzsche. Read his essay on tarantula. He describes people who want to take revenge as a tarantula, and these calls that preachers of equality, and in their heart actually sits revenge. So again, the power motive.
Yeah.
And I can understand that in myself because I've been there and I understood why did I have this psychological fixation, Jung, that is a Freudian term. Why did I have this fixation and why did I see the world in that sense? I understand that it had to do with my relationship with my father, blah, blah, blah. But fundamentally, I transcend it. If I take responsibility for the stuff I can change and not blaming the entire world for not pleasing me.
Yeah. Right? And my understanding of Nietzsche is that's exactly that. You have the master moralities and the slave moralities, where the slave morality is those who want to blame the world for where they are and their condition in the world, and the master morality is saying, I am responsible for my own fate. And that what we've seems to have happened in modernity right now is that the slave morality has been put up on a pedestal, and that the bigger victim you are, the better person you are because you've endured more and you deserve more, or what happened. So you have this strange battle going on right now where even the most privileged people, and you see this with some of the media personalities that are out there that come from these unbelievably privileged background, like Taylor Lorenz or something. Your parents were rich, your grandparents were rich, but you're like, you play this victim card and they get pats on the back of it over it.
Down with capitalism, sent from an iPhone.
Yeah, sent from an iPhone. And by the way, like, your parents have given you every cushion in the world.
That is That is, we started talking about psychological development. And one thing every culture in earlier times had was initiation rites, especially for men. We can talk about women in a second, but let's talk about men. They were usually initiated into the manhood with
Yep.
18, 20, 16 different ages,
Yep.
and they were scared to death, which happened basically in my horror trip, right? So
Yeah.
and or worse than death, it was worse than death, but anyway. And from that on, they understand that I cannot be safe anymore just by my parents, and I
Yeah.
need to grow, I need to become mature, and we lack these initiation rites. And so people become biologically mature, right, with
Yeah.
30, 25, but not psychologically mature, because it's for that you need initiation, the shamanic initiation especially, and we lack that. And it seems to play out that victimization is what is the sickness of that spirit, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. On a personal note, I didn't feel like a man until like I was in my late 20s after my mother died, and I was essentially the only one taking care of anything,
Yeah.
and having to put all of that on
Trauma,
the trauma
the
of it for sure.
anti-fragility, another word from Taleb. Trauma is
Yeah.
actually something that allows you to grow, right? So it's an invitation and not something you should discard and assume that reality is only oppressive or whatever.